This week's parsha is Parshas Behaaloscha. One of the topics discussed in this week's parsha is the parsha of the inauguration of the Leviim. The Bechoros, the firstborns, were originally going to be the ones who were going to do the avodah in the Mikdash, and when they sinned with the Egel HaZahav, they lost it, and it was given instead to the Leviim. So in this parsha, we have the parsha of the menorah, and then we have the parsha of the Leviim being chosen. And the Torah talks about two different processes that the Leviim went through. One is Ve'aviru sar al kol besarim. The Torah tells us that they underwent a complete body shave with a razor. Chazal tell us over all the parts of the body, even the payas, were completely shaved off on the Leviim. And there was also this concept of a tenufa of Aaron HaKohen picking up the Leviim and waving them. I assume it has some Kabbalistic significance than what we find by waving of the karbanos and waving of the lulav and esrog. There was some miraculous ability of Aaron to wave all the Leviim, and that was also part of the process. But the part I wanted to focus on is the shaving, the idea of Aviru Sar al Kol Besarim. We find this discussed in the Mishnah in Leviim in Perek Yudalid, Mishnah Dalid. It says, Shosha Megachin V'Segagachtan was a mitzvah. There are three who shaved, and their shaving was actually a mitzvah. Who were they? The Nazir, the Metzora, and the Leviim. And the Leviim and the Metzora shaved the whole body. The Nazir shaved his head. And they all, if they shaved, says the Mishnah, without a razor, or if they leave over two hairs, then they haven't done the mitzvah properly. The mitzvah involves shaving with a razor. We know that a man is forbidden to shave his beard or his payas with a razor, but there seems to be a heter in these three specific situations to shave them with a razor. Okay, so I grew up with this anticipation that this was going to be something that I would experience in the coming of Mashiach, that I would be going through this shaving process. But the Rav on this Mishnah spells out that this was not a mitzvah adoros. This was a one-time thing that the Leviim shaved at this time. So one can ask a question: what's the explanation behind this commandment? Why does the Metzora shave off his hair? Why did the Leviim shave off their hair? I've heard an idea, Kabbalistic idea, can't tell you much about it, of something about the hair representing that there's some reason supposedly why the Hasidim sometimes shave their hair, that it has to do with hair representing something bad. Sounds good, right? Give a share about the evils of long hair, why it's good to lose your hair, then go sit down and cry after the shir is over. But Lamaisa, I'm not so familiar with that. The Sum Derech mentions an idea that the hair represents, he says, this is what I'm talking about, an idea of the hair represents a foundation of connection to Hashem, and the Leviim were taking down the old connection and building a much more powerful foundation on this new footing in a stronger way. Again, some sort of a concept of a Kabbalistic idea that the hair represents something, and removing it is a way of building a different type of a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I found that this concept of this rebirth idea is actually found, the Trumas Hadeshin actually brings from the Rashi we're going to get to in a minute on this pasuk about the shaving, that he brings that there was a custom for the people who were Jewish, and Nebuch became what's called a mumer. They went off and served Avodah Zarah, that if they came back to do tshuva, that they would actually go to the mikvah and they would do a shave. I think probably without a razor, probably without shaving the beard and the payas. But there was this idea of shaving as part of the return process. And in fact, the point of that Trumas Hadeshin and that tshuva in Aleph Pei Vav, you can look it up on Svaria, was the idea that he was saying it was mutter even to do on Chol HaMoed. The Ta is actually in two places. I think one of them might be Yoredeya, Reish Chav Zayin, Sif Katan Hey, if I remember correctly, that he mentions this minhag that they had of this Baal Tshuva process of shaving when they return from Avodah Zarah. So there's this idea that the shaving of the hair could be symbolic of rebirth. I found an idea that I found a little more tangible in the Tam Vadas of Rav Moshe Shternbach. So Rashi on this pasuk brings a pshat, it's the only pshat that I've seen in the Rishonim for why the Leviim shaved. It says because they were basically providing a kapara for the Bechoros who had served Avodah Zarah. They were coming as the kapara for the Bechoros, and their sin was the Avodah Zarah, and Avodah Zarah is called Zivchei Mesim, service of the Zvachim of the dead. A Mitzvah is also called a mace, and therefore, the same way that a Mitzvah shaves, so too they shave the same as a Mitzvah, because there's this connection that a Mitzvah is called a mace, and what the Avodah Zarah is like Zivchei Mesim. So Shternbach asked the question that if the Bechoros serving Avodah Zarah are the ones who served Avodah Zarah, wouldn't they be the one who should be doing the shaving, not the Leviim? He also says we don't find such a concept that people who serve Avodah Zarah shave, because he didn't have access to this Trumas Hadeshin at the time. He writes in the Akdamah to the Sefer that he wrote it when he didn't have access to too many Svarim in the place where he was. We should be zeicher to write a Sefer like this when we had access to lots of Svarim. So he suggests that the time mitzvah, why does the Mitzvah shave? He says because he spoke Lashon Hara. So the Torah wants to distance him from people. It sends him outside the Machana, and it also tells him to shave because that makes him different from everybody. It pushes him away from people. And that also helps him, even though now this is the purification process, but it trains him to watch his speak and not be nichshal in Lashon Hara, the fact that he's separated from other people. He says it could be the same thing by the Leviim. They've shaved now that they've done a full body shave, now they look different from the rest of the people. So it creates a certain separation. It creates a opportunity where they're separate from people, and now they've just focused on their kedushin, their avodas Hashem. And he says it gives them this idea that they shouldn't be nispal from bizyonos, that they should know we're the army of Hashem. We look this way, and we look separate, and we have the strength to be able to stand strong in our principles and do that. Rav Shternbach makes this point that in general, we as a people today, we have to be strong in the way that we dress and the way that we do things, and not be impressed from the looks of people who look down on us and like, what are you doing? What planet did you come from? Why are you following that religion? Why are you dressing that way? And be strong in our principles. And it's hit me, we were talking about Hasidim and the way they dress before, it hit me, I was zoiche in one of the positions where I to work with Hasidim, and this is one of the main lessons I learned from them, is really that they have a strong confidence in the way they dress and in what they believe in. I think a lot of us are more, non-Hasidim are more wishy-washy, embarrassed. How do we look? What do people say about us? Are we really right? They're so confident that they're right. I'm familiar with somebody, he's a Hasidic shaman, and he lives in a place where there's no Hasidim for tens of miles, and it's the kind of community where people tease him for being Hasidish, and he's very fine. He's looking at them, I'm not the one who's going to burn. They have a certain confidence and strength in what they stand for, and they're not embarrassed how they look. And they say, fakert. The Goyim are not ashamed. We would be ashamed in front of these Goyim. Why would we be ashamed? And I think we have to learn from them that midah as much as we can to try to feel confident in the way that we dress, and which does set us apart. If a person wears a white shirt and a black hat and a jacket, it is making a statement. I associate with this group. And people, whether or not you want to dissociate from other groups, but people look at you differently. If the person wears a yarmulke, the Goyim look at him differently. And a person's making a choice to do that, and it's one of the lessons we have to learn from this parsha, as Rav Shternbach, is to be able to do that, to feel confident in who we are, and be comfortable making that separation, making that statement, this is who I am, and I'm not nispal from how other people are going to see it. Maybe that's part of the symbolism of what the Leviim were doing, doing something that made them look so different from everybody else, was that strength when the Leviim got here in the first place to this position. They said, they resisted the temptation to serve Avodah Zarah like everybody else. They were ready to take on the rest of the Jewish people in this way, and they were strengthening this now in the way that they dressed, the way that they shaved. We'll be able to learn from them and grow in this midah. Wish you a wonderful Shabbos.